The crystal chandeliers of the Harrison mansion sparkled overhead as I adjusted my simple black dress, feeling every bit the outsider they believed me to be. 10 years of marriage to their precious son Michael, and the Harrisons still treated me like an intruder who had somehow snuck past their carefully guarded social barriers. "Olivia, darling, that dress is quaint," Victoria Harrison, my mother-in-law, said with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "Though I suppose it's the best you could do on your limited means." I returned her smile, touching the strand of pearls at my neck, the only piece of jewelry I wore. "Thank you for noticing, Victoria. Sometimes simple is best." She wouldn't understand that my limited means was a choice, not a necessity. That the small consulting firm I ran from a modest office downtown was just the tip of the iceberg. That while they flaunted their wealth with gaudy displays like tonight's party, I had spent the last decade quietly building something far more substantial. The Harrisons' annual summer gala was in full swing, their sprawling mansion filled with Boston's elite. Doctors, lawyers, old money families, all gathered to pay homage to what they believed was one of the city's most powerful dynasties. If only they knew how hollow that power had become. "Mother, please." Michael appeared at my side, champagne flutes in hand. "Must you always criticize?" I accepted the champagne, letting my fingers brush against his. Despite his family's best efforts, our marriage had remained strong. Michael had chosen me over their objections, loving me for who I was, not the social status they craved. "I'm simply trying to help," Victoria sniffed. "Someone has to maintain our family standards." Before Michael could respond, his father's voice boomed through the grand ballroom. "Welcome, everyone." Robert Harrison stood on the marble staircase, commanding attention as he'd done for 40 years as CEO of Harrison Financial Group. "Thank you all for joining us to celebrate another record year." The crowd applauded politely. They didn't know that those record numbers were built on sand, that Harrison Financial Group was teetering on the edge of collapse, held together by smoke, mirrors, and desperate measures. I knew because I had watched it happen, had traced every questionable transaction, every covered-up loss, every attempt to maintain the illusion of success. Not out of malice, but because I had to protect what was mine. "And of course," Robert continued, his gaze finding me in the crowd, "we must acknowledge all members of our family, even those who perhaps don't quite measure up to the Harrison name." The subtle dig drew knowing chuckles from the crowd. Michael's hand tightened around mine, but I squeezed back reassuringly. Let them laugh. They didn't know what was coming. Victoria seized the moment, raising her voice just loud enough to carry. "Well, we all know why she married into the family, don't we? A classic gold digger, if I ever saw one." The whispers spread like wildfire through the ballroom. I could feel the stares, see the smirks. Michael started to protest, but I touched his arm, stopping him. I glanced at my watch, an understated Patek Philippe that cost more than Victoria's entire jewelry collection. "Actually," I said calmly, "I think it's time for some truth-telling." Robert's face darkened. "Now see here." 3, I counted down, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. "What are you doing?" Victoria demanded. 2, I smiled, remembering the exact moment I had discovered their desperate attempt to save their crumbling empire. 1, right on cue, Robert's phone rang, then Victoria's, then the phones of every board member present at the party. I watched as they reached for their devices, confusion turning to horror as they read the messages. "This is impossible," Robert whispered, his face ashen. All our accounts. They're empty? I supplied helpfully. Yes, I imagine your bank is quite concerned about the irregular transfers they've discovered. Decades of mismanagement, hidden losses, illegal manipulations. It's all coming to light now. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she gripped her phone. What have you done? Me? I haven't done anything except protect my investments. You see, while you were all busy mocking my little consulting firm, I was building something real. And over the last 5 years, I've been quietly buying up Harrison Financial Group's debt, becoming your largest creditor. The ballroom erupted in chaos as the truth began to sink in. Robert Harrison, the great financial titan, had driven his company to the brink of bankruptcy, and in his desperate attempts to hide it, he played right into my hands. Why? Michael asked softly beside me. Not angry, just curious. He'd known something was coming, had seen me working late nights, had trusted me even when I couldn't tell him everything. Because 10 years ago, your family tried to destroy me rather than accept me, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. They thought I was nothing but a gold digger. So I decided to show them what a real financial predator looks like. Victoria lunged forward, her composure finally cracking. You scheming little... Careful, I cut her off. You really can't afford to make enemies right now. Especially not with the person who owns your fate. Security guards began entering the ballroom, not the Harrisons' personnel, but my own team. As the party dissolved into panic and confusion, I took Michael's hand. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything, I said quietly, but I had to protect you too. He looked at me, then at his shell-shocked family, and finally at the empire crumbling around us. What happens now? I smiled, thinking of the plans I'd spent years preparing. Now we rebuild something honest, something real. That is, I hesitated for the first time that evening, if you're still with me? Michael's answer was to pull me close and kiss me, right there in front of everyone. When we parted, he was grinning. Always. Though you might want to explain exactly how my wife became the secret owner of one of Boston's largest financial groups. It's quite a story, I said, watching as my security team began escorting board members to private rooms for questioning. And it started the day your mother called me new money trash at our engagement party. The night was still young, and I had only begun to reveal the true extent of what I'd built in the shadows of their arrogance. The Harrisons had wanted a gold digger? Well, they were about to learn the difference between someone who takes wealth and someone who creates it. The Harrison mansion felt different in the cold light of morning. The crystal chandeliers that had sparkled so brightly at last night's party now cast weak shadows across the empty ballroom where everything had changed. I sat in Robert Harrison's personal study, my study now, reviewing documents as the family gathered in the living room, trying to comprehend their new reality. Mrs. Harrison, my assistant, Thomas, appeared at the door. They're ready for you. I smiled at the irony. For 10 years, Victoria had insisted I didn't deserve the Harrison name. Now I owned it in ways she never had. It's time to tell them everything, I said, gathering my files. From the beginning. Walking into the living room, I saw the toll the night had taken. Robert Harrison's usual commanding presence had crumbled. He sat slumped in his leather armchair, looking every bit his 65 years. Victoria's perfect makeup couldn't hide her sleepless night, and their daughter Amanda's designer outfit seemed out of place now, like a costume she'd forgotten to remove. Only Michael, my husband, looked calm. He sat slightly apart from his family, watching me with a mix of pride and curiosity. He'd spent the night listening to the full story of how I'd orchestrated everything. And rather than anger, he'd shown admiration for how I'd protected us both. "Well?" Robert's voice cracked. "Are you here to gloat?" I took a seat, spreading the documents on the coffee table. "I'm here to explain. You all deserve to know how this happened. It started exactly 10 years ago, at my engagement party to Michael." Victoria flinched, remembering. "You called me new money trash," I continued, looking directly at her. But that wasn't the worst part. That same night, I overheard you and Robert plotting to destroy my father's company. "We did no such thing," Victoria protested, but her face betrayed her. September 15th, 2014, I read from a document. Harrison Financial Group initiated a hostile takeover of Sullivan Industries, my father's company. You leveraged inside information, called in political favors, and broke about a dozen SEC regulations. 3 months later, my father's life's work was gone. "Business is business," Robert muttered, but he couldn't meet my eyes. "My father died thinking he'd failed," I said quietly. "He never knew you cheated." That was when I decided to learn exactly how the game was played. I pulled out another file, my acceptance letter to Harvard Business School. While you were all sneering at my little consulting work, I was earning my MBA. Nights, weekends, studying every aspect of corporate finance and acquisition strategies. But more importantly, I was making connections. The next document made Robert's eyes widen. A photograph from a charity gala 5 years ago. In it, I was shaking hands with William Porter, CEO of First Boston Bank. "Bill Porter?" Robert whispered. "But he's my mentor," I finished. "Turns out we had something in common. You tried to destroy his first company too, back in the 90s. He was very interested in helping me understand the true state of Harrison Financial Group." I laid out more papers, financial records, audit reports, evidence of the slow but steady decline of the Harrison empire. "You've been covering up losses for years, cooking the books to maintain the illusion of success. When the 2020 market crash hit, you started making desperate moves. That's when I saw my opportunity. Through shell companies and blind trusts, I began buying up Harrison Financial's debt. Every time you needed a bailout, every emergency loan you took, it all came from companies I controlled. You were so convinced I was just a gold-digging trophy wife, you never bothered to look closely at who was really funding your survival." Amanda, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "But where did you get that kind of money? Even with a successful consulting firm?" I smiled. "Remember 3 years ago, when that mysterious tech startup revolutionized financial security software? The one Harrison Financial paid millions to use. Quantum Shield Technologies," Robert breathed. "That was you. My little consulting firm developed it. While you were hosting parties and buying yachts, I was building something revolutionary. The software you paid millions for, I used that money to buy more of your debt. Every time you bragged about Harrison Financial's cutting-edge security, you were actually funding your own takeover." Victoria stood suddenly, her composure cracking. "This is ridiculous. We'll fight this. We have lawyers, connections." "Your lawyers quit this morning," I interrupted calmly. "Your political connections won't return your calls, and the SEC is very interested in some irregularities we've uncovered in your recent filings." I turned to Michael, who had remained quiet throughout my explanation. "I never wanted to hurt you," I said softly. "Everything I did was to protect us from what I knew was coming. Your father's company was failing. If I hadn't stepped in, everything would have collapsed anyway, but the fall would have taken you down too. Michael reached for my hand, squeezing it. I understand. I think I've always known something wasn't right with the company. I just never imagined that your wife would be the one to fix it. I smiled. Remember when you asked why I insisted on that prenup, making sure I could never claim Harrison assets? I needed to ensure that when this day came, no one could accuse me of doing this for money. Very touching, Robert cut in, his voice bitter. So now what? You destroy everything we've built. No, I said firmly. Now I save it. Harrison Financial Group has a solid foundation underneath all the fraud and mismanagement. I'm going to rebuild it, honestly this time. I pulled out one final document. This is my offer. You all maintain your personal assets, homes, cars, savings. I'm not interested in destroying your lives. But Harrison Financial Group will be completely restructured under my leadership. And if we refuse? Victoria asked, though her voice lacked conviction. Then I turn over evidence of financial fraud to the SEC. And you learn what it's really like to lose everything. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. You have 24 hours to decide. As I turned to leave, Amanda spoke up. Wait, all these years, when we were mocking you, looking down on you, you were smarter than all of us, weren't you? I paused at the door. I wasn't smarter. I was just willing to work harder, dig deeper, and wait for the right moment. You all thought I married Michael for the Harrison money. The truth is, I married him because he was the only one in this family who saw me for who I really was. And who is that? Robert asked. Someone who builds things, I said simply. Someone who creates value instead of just spending it. You wanted a gold digger? Well, now you have something much more dangerous. A woman who knows exactly what her worth is. Leaving them to consider their options, I walked through the mansion's grand hallway, my heels clicking on the marble floors. The next 24 hours would determine the future of the Harrison legacy. But whatever they decided, I knew one thing for certain. I had already won. Thomas fell into step beside me. The board members are gathering for the emergency meeting, and the financial press is starting to ask questions. I nodded, already focusing on the next phase of my plan. The Harrisons' decision was almost irrelevant now. I had built something bigger than their empire, something that would reshape Boston's financial landscape. One more thing, Thomas added with a slight smile. Mrs. Victoria Harrison's country club membership has been suspended. Apparently, there are some concerns about her family's financial stability. I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the smallest victories were the sweetest. As my car pulled away from the mansion, I caught a glimpse of Victoria watching from an upstairs window. For 10 years, she had seen what she wanted to see: a social climber, a gold digger, an unworthy addition to her perfect family. Now she was finally seeing the truth, and the view was very different from the bottom looking up. 1 month after the party that changed everything, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office on the top floor of Harrison Financial Group's headquarters. The view of Boston's skyline was exactly the same as it had been from Robert's office, but everything else had changed. The headline in the Financial Times on my desk said it all. Harrison Financial Group emerges stronger under new leadership. How Olivia Sullivan Harrison transformed a failing dynasty. My phone buzzed, a message from Michael. Ready for this? Today was the day of reckoning. The Harrisons had taken their 24 hours, then asked for more time. I'd given them a month to fully understand their new reality. Now it was time to determine the future of their legacy. Send them in, I told my assistant. They entered as a family, but not with their usual arrogance. Robert had traded his bespoke suits for more modest attire. Victoria's jewelry was noticeably simpler. Amanda watched everything with new eyes, as if seeing the world clearly for the first time. "Please, sit." I gestured to the conference table where Thomas had arranged documents for everyone. "Before we start," Robert said, his voice lacking its usual boom, "I want you to know we've been watching what you've done this past month. The changes you've made to the company. They're remarkable," Amanda finished. "The restructuring, the new client protections, the transparency initiatives, the market's responding better than ever." I nodded, remembering the late nights and early mornings of the past month. While the Harrisons were adjusting to their new reality, I'd been implementing the plans I'd spent years developing. Harrison Financial Group was never beyond saving, I said. It just needed honest leadership. "Now shall we discuss your decision?" Victoria straightened in her chair. "We've had extensive family discussions. Your offer to let us keep our personal assets in exchange for complete control of the company." She paused, swallowing her pride. "We accept." "Good," I said, sliding documents across the table. "But that's no longer my only offer." They looked up in surprise. "Robert," I turned to my father-in-law. "You spent 40 years building this company. Yes, you lost your way, made serious mistakes, and nearly destroyed everything. But the foundation you built was solid. I'm offering you a position as advisory director. No executive power, but your experience could still be valuable if you're willing to work with integrity this time." Robert's hands trembled as he reached for the contract. "You trust me, after everything?" "Trust is earned," I said firmly. "This is a chance to earn it back." "Amanda," I continued, turning to my sister-in-law, "you got an MBA from Wharton that you've never really used, too busy playing socialite. I'm offering you a junior executive position, not because you are Harrison, but because I've seen your analysis of our recent changes. You've got good instincts when you actually use them." Amanda's eyes widened. For the first time, someone was seeing her as more than just a rich man's daughter. "And Victoria," I turned to my mother-in-law, who tensed visibly, "your social connections are extensive. I'm offering you a role in our client relations department, focusing on charitable initiatives. You're good at bringing people together when you want to be. Let's put that talent to actual use." Victoria's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. "Why? Why offer us anything? You've won. You could destroy us completely." "Because this was never about destruction," I said quietly. "This was about transformation. Of the company, yes, but also of this family." I stood up, walking back to the window. 10 years ago, you rejected me because I wasn't from your world. You called me a gold digger because you couldn't imagine I might have value beyond money. So I'd built something bigger than money. I'd built real worth. Turning back to them, I continued. Every insult, every snub, every dismissal, they just motivated me to work harder. While you were protecting your social status, I was creating actual value. While you were hiding your failures, I was learning from mine. That's the difference between old money and new vision. The irony, Michael spoke for the first time, moving to stand beside me, is that you were so worried about Olivia being a gold digger, you didn't notice she was actually a builder. Everything she touched turned to gold, not because she took it, but because she created it. Looking at their faces, I could see the full weight of understanding finally settling in. They'd spent years fearing I would steal their fortune, never imagining I would build something greater. These contracts, I gestured to the documents, are more than just job offers. They're an opportunity to be part of something real, to stop living on past glory and start building future success. The question is, are you ready to earn your place instead of just claiming it by birthright? One by one, they reached for their contracts. Even Victoria, after a long moment of internal struggle, picked up her pen. "One last thing," I said as they prepared to sign. "There's a clause in there of family dinner. Monthly, at our house. No pretense, no power plays, no positioned seating. Just family learning to be family. You still want that?" Victoria asked softly. "After everything?" "Family isn't about worth or wealth," I replied, thinking of my father, of all the lessons he taught me about value and dignity. It's about growth. And maybe it's time the Harrisons learned to grow together instead of tearing each other down. As they signed their contracts, I felt Michael squeeze my hand. We'd done more than save a company. We'd given a family a chance to redefine itself. Later that evening, as Michael and I walked through the public garden, he asked, "Was it worth it? All those years of planning, working in secret, building your empire in the shadows?" I thought about the changes already taking place. Robert, humbled but engaged, offering genuine insights in advisory meetings. Amanda, throwing herself into executive training with newfound purpose. Even Victoria, slowly learning to measure worth by more than just social status. "You know what your mother said to me yesterday?" I told him. She apologized. Actually apologized, for the first time in 10 years. Said she finally understood what real value looks like. "And do you forgive them?" he asked. I watched the sunset paint the Boston skyline in shades of gold. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about creating a better future. That's what I'm good at. Building things, including bridges. Michael smiled. "You know, they're calling you the new face of Boston finance. The woman who turned a family scandal into a corporate renaissance." "Let them talk," I said, thinking of the next phase of my plans. The innovations, expansions, and transformations still to come. I didn't do this for their approval. I did it because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising higher, he finished. Exactly. They wanted to see a gold digger? I showed them an empire builder instead. And this is just the beginning. As we walked home, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the daughter of a proud businessman to the woman who transformed Boston's financial landscape. The Harrisons had tried to break me, but instead, they'd motivated me to build something unbreakable. In the end, the greatest triumph wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in showing that true worth isn't in what you take, it's in what you create. And I was just getting started.